Have you ever noticed an elderly loved one suddenly giving away cherished possessions? Or perhaps speaking of deceased relatives as if they were present in the room? These might not be random behaviors, but rather ancient signals of life's final transition. As a hospice physician with over 3 decades of experience, I've witnessed thousands of elderly persons in their final year of life. What continues to astonish me is how consistent the end-of-life signs are across cultures and generations, yet how frequently they go unrecognized by well-meaning families until it's too late. Today's elderly wisdom draws from both ancient understanding and modern medical knowledge to help you recognize the 5 critical signs that an elderly person may be in their final year of life. This knowledge isn't about surrendering hope or hastening the inevitable. Rather, it's about gaining precious awareness that allows for meaningful conversations, appropriate care decisions, and the kind of sacred presence that honors a lifetime of experience. As we explore these 5 end-of-life signs, I invite you to approach this topic not with fear, but with the reverence it deserves. For in understanding the final chapters of life, we discover profound truths about what matters most in all our chapters. Welcome, I'm Vernon, and today we're exploring 5 critical signs that an elderly person may be in their final year of life. Indicators that families often recognize only in retrospect, when the opportunity for meaningful response has passed. Our relationship with mortality has changed dramatically in modern times. Where once death was an expected visitor in the home, it has now become institutionalized and often medicalized, distancing us from the natural wisdom about end-of-life transitions that our ancestors understood intuitively. And just wait until you hear sign number 3. It completely transformed how I understand the intuitive awareness many elderly persons have about their approaching end. This single insight has helped countless families create space for profound conversations they might otherwise have missed. The elderly wisdom I share today comes from both my professional experience and the timeless understanding passed down through generations. Across cultures and throughout history, humans have recognized consistent patterns that signal life's final transition. Why do certain behaviors emerge in an elderly person's final year? What subtle changes might we notice if we're attentive? As we explore these 5 critical end-of-life signs, I invite you to consider how this elderly wisdom might apply to someone in your life, or perhaps to your own journey. If this exploration of end-of-life signs resonates with you, please subscribe to our channel and watch this video until the end. Now, let's begin with the first critical sign that an elderly person may be in their final year. The first critical sign that an elderly person may be in their final year of life is what I call the profound withdrawal from future planning, a subtle but significant shift in how they relate to the future. This end-of-life sign manifests as gradual disengagement from long-term planning. The elderly person who previously enjoyed planning family gatherings, discussing next year's garden, or scheduling future medical checkups, suddenly shows marked disinterest in these activities. This isn't mere apathy or depression, though it's often mistaken for both. Rather, it reflects an intuitive awareness that their timeline is shortening, a natural redirection from future planning to present experience. I witnessed this with Eleanor, an 87-year-old former teacher who had always maintained an active calendar. Her daughter Martha noticed Eleanor suddenly lost interest in their annual summer vacation planning, something she had enthusiastically participated in for decades. Martha initially attributed this to Eleanor's recent pneumonia. She left peacefully that June, never having needed those summer plans. This withdrawal from future planning often appears alongside increased focus on completing unfinished business, organizing affairs, having important conversations, or resolving conflicts. The horizon visibly contracts from years to months to weeks. Have you noticed an elderly loved one showing this shift? Share your observations below in the comment. The second critical sign that an elderly person may be in their final year of life is what medical professionals call the visible physical decline beyond normal aging. a noticeable acceleration in the body's natural diminishment. This end-of-life sign manifests as a marked change in physical capacity that occurs relatively rapidly compared to the gradual changes of normal aging. While aging naturally brings reduced energy and capability, the decline in the final year often follows a steeper trajectory. Key indicators include significant unintentional weight loss, often 10% plus of body weight within 6 months, decreased interest in food and hydration, reduced mobility, difficulty recovering from minor illnesses that previously caused only temporary setbacks. I remember Robert, a 92-year-old former carpenter who had maintained remarkable strength throughout his 9th decade. His son, James, noticed that within just 3 months, Robert lost nearly 15 pounds without trying, began sleeping 14 to 16 hours daily, and needed significantly more assistance with basic activities. James initially attributed these changes to medication, but I recognized this constellation of symptoms as a common pattern in the final year of life. Robert passed away peacefully 4 months later, having gradually declined without any catastrophic medical event. Modern medicine has documented this pattern extensively. A landmark study in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that rapid functional decline, particularly when affecting multiple systems simultaneously, frequently signals entry into life's final chapter. The body begins withdrawing resources from peripheral functions, even before specific organ systems fail. If you've observed an elderly loved one experiencing this accelerated physical decline, please share your experience in the comments. Your insights might help others distinguish between normal aging and this critical end-of-life sign. The third critical sign that an elderly person may be in their final year of life, and perhaps the most profound, the intuitive awareness of approaching end, a mysterious but well-documented phenomenon in which many people seem to sense their impending transition. This end-of-life sign often manifests through direct verbal statements or symbolic communications. The elderly person might begin making statements like, "I won't be here next Christmas," or "I'm getting ready for my journey." Sometimes they speak of deceased loved ones as though they are present or describe preparing for a significant transition. What makes this sign particularly noteworthy is how frequently these intuitive awarenesses prove accurate, even when there is no clear medical reason for the person to anticipate imminent death. Many hospice nurses and physicians have documented cases where elderly persons predicted their death with remarkable precision, sometimes to the very day. I witnessed this extraordinary phenomenon with Margaret, an 83-year-old woman with no terminal diagnosis. During a routine visit, she told me, completely calmly, that she was leaving on Thursday. When I asked her where she was going, she smiled and said, "Home, real home." Her daughter dismissed this as a mistake, but Margaret began giving specific instructions about her personal effects and saying meaningful goodbyes to family members. Despite having no acute medical condition, Margaret left peacefully in her sleep early Thursday morning, exactly as she had predicted. Her daughter later found a journal entry from 2 weeks prior that read, "I have 2 more weeks to complete my work here. I feel it clearly." This form of elderly wisdom appears across cultures and throughout history. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this phenomenon as the clear light of recognition. While many indigenous traditions acknowledge the ability of the elderly to sense when they are being called to the next world, modern research has begun to validate this ancient understanding. A study in the archives of gerontology and geriatrics found that approximately 70% of elderly patients who expressed a strong sense of their approaching death pass away within the time frame they predicted, even when their medical conditions didn't suggest imminent end. Have you witnessed an elderly loved one express this kind of intuitive awareness? If you feel comfortable sharing in the comment, your experience might provide valuable insight for others encountering this profound end-of-life sign. The fourth critical sign involves distinctive changes in sleep patterns and consciousness, shifts that go beyond normal age-related sleep disturbances and represent a fundamental reorganization of awareness. This sign manifests as significant alterations in both sleep quantity and quality. The elderly person typically begins sleeping much more, often 12 to 16 hours daily, with increased difficulty distinguishing between sleep and wakefulness. They may experience periods of sudden alertness followed by profound fatigue, and report dreams or visions with unusual clarity and significance. Perhaps most telling is what hospice professionals call terminal restlessness, alternating between periods of sleepiness and agitated wakefulness, often with increased confusion at dusk and dawn. I observed these changes with my dad's best friend, Thomas, a 91-year-old retired professor. His daughter Susan noticed his previously regular sleep schedule suddenly transform. She told me that her dad began sleeping through most mornings, then would be completely alert for a few hours in the afternoon, often sharing remarkable lucid memories from his childhood. The strangest part was how he began mixing past and present. He would wake suddenly and urgently tell his daughter about conversations with his long-deceased mother, describing them not as dreams but as visits. When fully awake, he recognized these experiences were unusual. Thomas left peacefully 3 months after these changes began, following a pattern of increasingly longer periods of sleep until he simply didn't wake. Modern neuroscience has begun to understand these consciousness changes as the brain's shifting neurotransmitter patterns during the dying process. A study in the Journal of Palliative Medicine documented similar patterns in over 1,200 patients, noting that these distinctive sleep-wake disturbances frequently precede death by 3 to 6 months. This profound shift represents more than mere physical decline. Many wisdom traditions recognize it as a transitional state where boundaries between worlds begin to thin. The fifth critical sign involves deliberate efforts toward reconciliation and relationship resolution, a natural impulse to complete unfinished emotional business before departing. This end-of-life sign appears as the elderly person initiates conversations about past conflicts, expresses previously withheld feelings, seeks to reconnect with estranged family members, or explicitly offers and requests forgiveness. They may suddenly speak with remarkable emotional directness after decades of reserve, or show uncharacteristic vulnerability about regrets and appreciation. This pattern is so consistent across cultures that some hospice professionals refer to it as the 4 gifts of resolution: the need to say, "I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you," before departing. I heard Catherine tell of her mother, an 88-year-old woman who had remained estranged from her sister for 30 years after a family business dispute. Without explanation, Catherine's mother suddenly asked her daughter to arrange a meeting with her long-estranged sister. When Catherine asked what prompted her to do so, she simply said, "There is no time for old grievances." The two met and reached a profound reconciliation. Catherine passed away 7 weeks later, still in contact with her sister during her final weeks. This form of elderly wisdom about relationship completion has been documented across diverse cultural traditions. Similarly, the Jewish tradition of seeking forgiveness reflects this same understanding of life's final emotional tasks. Modern psychological research confirms what ancient wisdom has long recognized. A landmark study found that 86% of patients showed increased efforts toward relationship resolution in their final months, with researchers noting that this pattern frequently emerged before patients had been informed of their terminal prognosis. After we enter our exploration of these 5 critical signs that an elderly person may be in their final year of life, I want to emphasize that this elderly wisdom isn't meant to create anxiety or premature grief. Rather, it offers an opportunity for meaningful presence during a sacred transition. We've examined withdrawal from future planning, physical decline beyond normal aging, intuitive awareness of approaching end, changes in sleep and consciousness, and reconciliation efforts. 5 patterns that appear consistently across cultures and throughout history. These signs appear rarely in isolation. More typically, several emerge concurrently, creating a constellation of changes that signal entry into life's final chapter. When we recognize these end-of-life signs, we gain the precious gift of awareness, an opportunity to prioritize presence over distractions, meaningful conversation over routine interaction, and quality of experience over unnecessary intervention. Perhaps the most important application of this elderly wisdom is how it might transform our response to these final transitions. Rather than viewing these signs with alarm, we can receive them as invitations to deeper connection and authenticity. I invite you to carry this elderly wisdom not as a burden of foreknowledge, but as a gift of awareness that may allow you to be fully present during precious final chapters, whether with a loved one or eventually in your own journey. If you found value in understanding these 5 critical end-of-life signs, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming video. I'd also love to hear your experiences with any of these 5 signs. Your insights in the comments below might help others navigate their own family journeys through life's final transitions. And don't forget to like, share this video with others who might benefit from this elderly wisdom. Understanding these signs could help many families recognize precious opportunities for connection before they're missed.